The prediction is already here. The uncomfortable part is that you were trained to ignore it, right up until the day it started erasing entire categories of work, and then pretending it was just automation. This is financial education, not financial advice, but if you feel uneasy watching your savings lose meaning while the stock market keeps grinning at you, that feeling is not anxiety. It is your brain noticing the disconnect between reality and the story you were sold. In 2026, the modern economy is doing something quiet and brutal. It is not merely redistributing income like the old textbooks promised. It is redistributing leverage. Who gets access to cash flow? Who gets to borrow cheaply? Who gets to own the machines? Who gets to survive the next policy shock? And who gets treated as an expensive mistake? You have felt it in smaller ways. The hiring freezes, the "we are restructuring" emails, the way your salary still goes up slowly, but the rent, the insurance, the groceries, and the healthcare bills act like they are on a different planet. And now the real accelerant is artificial intelligence, not as a futuristic concept. As a force already moving through offices, call centers, software teams, legal workflows, marketing production, and even parts of healthcare. When Elon Musk talks about 2026, or when leaders in the AI space talk about rapid replacement, most people hear science fiction. That is how they protect themselves from fear. But the mechanism underneath the hype is simple, and it is mechanical in the way a trap closes. When you can automate a task for less than it costs to employ a person, you do not need permission. You just need adoption. So here is what you are going to learn. Why the magic of markets stopped working for normal people even while the graphs kept rising. Why the Federal Reserve's interest rate moves matter to you far more than they admit. Why housing detached from wages, and why climate disruptions are turning the insurance industry into a slow-motion eviction notice, and why the AI transition is not just changing jobs, it is changing the entire loop of money, consumption, and employment that made modern capitalism feel stable. First, remember the old pattern. People laugh at predictions until the prediction becomes a timeline. Back in 2011, Elon Musk publicly discussed ideas about rockets and reusability that sounded ridiculous to people with comfortable assumptions. They treated him like a showman. Then the timeline caught up. Later he talked about humans not needing certain mechanical interfaces, about brain-computer connections, and about machines being able to interpret intention and act. People called it overreach. And yet, by 2026, you no longer have to imagine the direction. You can see prototypes, partnerships, implants, and trials. Not everywhere, not for everyone, but close enough that denial stops being smart and starts being a coping strategy. But that is not even the core issue. The core issue is that Musk's track record is not just about being right, it is about being funded. When predictions get knighted by money, the future has a budget line. People think it is vision, it is execution, and execution is always backed by capital, data, and distribution. Now take that logic and apply it to 2026's money system. In the 1960s, the world's combined economic output, the GDP, roughly matched how much new investment capital the system could absorb. Put in plain terms, every additional dollar invested into the global economy could still generate meaningful additional profit. It was like a store with more foot traffic. Add a little marketing spend and sales rise. Add a little factory capacity and production rises. Add a little logistics and the supply chain moves faster. The marginal return on investment still felt alive. Then we hit an inflection point around the late 1990s and early 2000s. After the dot-com era and the acceleration of globalization, the world kept pouring money into the same kinds of growth. Meanwhile, the real productivity gains did not keep pace with the flood of capital. This is how you get a world where investment capital stacks up, but the profit per dollar starts to flatten. The numbers get worse, even when the headline excitement stays loud. A useful way to think about this is to imagine a restaurant buffet. In the early years, when the crowd was smaller, the first trays you put out got eaten quickly, and everyone got value. Then the buffet expanded and the crowd exploded. Now you can keep producing food, but if you overproduce relative to demand, you do not get more profit, you get waste. The global economy did not stop working. It stopped working like it used to. By 2020, the system was already fragile. Then the pandemic hit, and governments did what governments always do when the math gets scary. They injected liquidity. They lowered borrowing costs. They expanded balance sheets. They tried to stabilize the demand side long enough for investors to believe the old story again. And the story sounded comforting. Inflation was rising, but it would stabilize. Rates would normalize. Employment would heal. Home prices would settle. You would get your normal back. Then 2022 and 2023 arrived with a different script. Inflation came down in some official measures, yes. But the purchasing power damage does not reverse just because the chart looks nicer. Your wage growth lagged. Your bills did not return to their old levels. The cost of living became a permanent tax. This is where the Fed's decisions become real to your body, not just your portfolio. When the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to fight inflation, it did not hit the wealthy first. It hit ordinary borrowers, ordinary savers, ordinary renters, and ordinary businesses that depend on cheap credit. Higher rates do not just make borrowing expensive, they also reduce the present value of future earnings. That means asset prices, especially long-duration assets like tech-heavy equity and real estate, respond to rate expectations like a magnet responds to steel. But here is the nasty part you never hear in polite conversations. While the system raised rates to cool inflation, it also created a new incentive structure. Investors who already had capital benefited from high yields on bonds and from stock buybacks financed at strategic moments. Meanwhile, people without capital were left trying to catch up with prices that were sticky and wages that were not. So the disconnect widened. The stock market could hit highs while your bank account felt like it was running on fumes. That is not accidental. It is the predictable result of a system designed to protect the value of claims held by those who already own assets. And you can measure this disconnect without conspiracy theories. Just look at the way wealth inequality behaves in transitions. When capital is scarce and risk is high, those with cash flow can buy through fear. Those without cash flow get forced to sell or forced to cut living standards. When the top 1% increases ownership, not only does their wealth grow, but their ability to shape policy and capital allocation increases too. Now pattern interrupt. Imagine you are a nurse named David. You work the night shift. You do not invest much time into markets. You invest time into surviving your shift, into paying your insurance, into making sure your kids have what they need. David did not do anything wrong. David obeyed the rules. Then rents jump again, not slightly, repeatedly. In some regions, housing prices outpace wage growth by such a margin that it is no longer a market adjustment. It is a structural separation. A generation can start with good credit and still be priced out of buying a home. So David becomes a renter forever, and the growth he sees in the economy becomes irrelevant to him. Now zoom out. The housing crisis across the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia has a shared signature. Home prices do not merely fluctuate, they detach from wages, and once that happens, the social contract shifts. You do not get stability. You get a slow churn of rent increases, moving costs, and the constant stress of being one emergency away from financial collapse. Climate makes it worse. Insurance markets are tightening in regions exposed to floods, wildfire risk, storms, and other climate-driven disasters. When insurance becomes unaffordable or unavailable, homeowners are not just losing coverage, they are losing the ability to stabilize their asset. Renters feel it too because landlords raise prices to compensate or exit the market. So now you have a perfect storm. Inflation damage to purchasing power, rising cost of living and housing, climate pressures on insurance and mobility, AI-driven job displacement in sectors that used to feel safe because they were desk jobs, and debt levels globally exceeding $300 trillion, which means there is always pressure to monetize assets, restructure liabilities, and push pain down the chain. And here is where the story turns darker. It is not only that your job might change, it is that the economic loop that funds jobs may weaken. Think about the basic loop. Most people earn money through work, they spend money through consumption. Businesses earn revenue and reinvest in hiring. Hiring creates more earnings. That is the cycle. Now insert the AI disruption. AI can replace tasks. Sometimes it replaces an entire role. Sometimes it replaces a department. Sometimes it replaces a job category by compressing the output a small team can produce. Instead of 20 people doing a process, now 5 do it with AI assistance. Or sometimes the process is fully automated. That changes consumption indirectly. People who lose income spend less. When spending weakens, businesses do not just reorganize. They cut costs. Hiring slows. Opportunities shrink. The cycle feeds on itself. This is why AI is so politically explosive. It is not just a technology story. It is a social stability story. If a large portion of work disappears and wages do not return, the economy does not magically adjust into a fairer world. It adjusts into a higher inequality world unless policy and ownership structures change dramatically. And policy rarely changes fast enough to protect the middle class, because policy is built around defending existing majorities of capital and existing winners of the system. So let's bring in the retirement crisis, because it is a second front that makes AI replacement feel like a personal deadline. Many pension plans are underfunded. Social Security is strained by aging populations. The retirement age keeps getting pushed back. The narrative that workers will just work longer is not a strategy. It is a transfer of risk from institutions to individuals. If you are losing job stability in your 40s and 50s and your retirement system is underfunded, the psychological effect is immediate. People do not save for the long term. They stop saving because they are surviving. They consume their future. Now add a final pattern interrupt. Picture a different worker, a call center analyst named Maria. She has a degree. She worked her way up. She did not expect to be replaced by a chatbot. But then customer interactions get routed through AI systems. Transcripts are summarized. Complaints get categorized. Basic responses get automated. Maria's metrics start to look different because the work has changed. She is not measured on volume anymore. She is measured on exceptions. Eventually, the exceptions become fewer. Her job becomes a bottleneck that the company can fix by shifting it to a different region, or by using AI to reduce exceptions again. You are not lazy. You are not stupid. Maria is not incompetent. The job just got priced out. When enough people experience that, you get a labor market that looks fine on some headlines because unemployment rates can lag behind role elimination. But under the surface, the distribution shifts. People get forced into lower-paying roles, into gig work with no benefits, or into unemployment that turns into long-term financial damage. So what does an asset-owning society do when work becomes less reliable? It turns to capital preservation and capital hoarding. One of the clearest signals in recent years has been central banks and wealthy investors increasing gold holdings. World Gold Council data has suggested that official gold reserves growth and diversification has been happening at a pace that challenges older allocation assumptions. At the same time, during periods of financial stress, you see gold respond not like a risk-on asset, but like an insurance policy against monetary instability. Here is the cold interpretation. If a global system is approaching structural limits, rational institutions hedge. They do not put everything into the same paper they already own. They diversify into hard assets because they fear that the value of currency might be eroded over time. Now contrast this with what you were told to do. Most people were told to invest in a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds and to trust that retirement accounts would recover. Many were told that the market always wins if you zoom out long enough. But what if zooming out reveals a different story, where nominal returns exist, but real value growth fails to match the cost of living? This is where purchasing power and measurement become the real battle. If your salary rises slowly while asset inflation and cost inflation rise fast, you can feel like you are losing even when some headlines claim stability. When money becomes cheaper to create and expensive to keep, the system rewards ownership of claims and penalizes people who live paycheck to paycheck. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable comparison: price versus value. A simple household example makes it visceral. 10 years ago, if you earned $100 million worth of your local currency and the house you wanted cost the equivalent, it might have felt reasonable. 10 years later, if your salary is higher, say $150 million, it sounds like progress. But if the house now costs $300 million, your higher salary becomes a joke. You did not gain purchasing power, you gained only nominal numbers. Gold versus stocks is a similar logic test. A chart can show stocks rising while the ability to convert that rise into a stable asset like gold flatlines or reverses over longer periods. Ray Dalio has often discussed these comparisons through the idea of using different measures to understand real value preservation. You can think of it like using a ruler that stretches. If you keep measuring in a currency that gets diluted by inflation, your measurements become misleading. Your assets can go up in dollars, while your wealth in real-world terms does not. So in 2026, while many people feel squeezed, the system sends signals that the wealthy are not just staying afloat, they are positioning. That brings us back to AI and to why learning the new skills is not a complete answer. In 2020, the advice was cheerful and safe. Learn to code, become an AI programmer, get into the tech pipeline. It sounded empowering. It also ignored the brutal reality of capability acceleration. AI does not just help humans. AI can do the work of humans who were expected to do it. When AI can generate code, debug, write marketing copy, create design drafts, summarize legal documents, and automate parts of accounting, then being technical becomes less of a moat and more of a ticket to entry that gets cheaper over time. And if the cost of replacing a task falls, the cost of hiring for that task also falls. This is why the biggest AI winners are not always the people who learn the most. They are the people who own the infrastructure, the distribution, the data, and the ability to scale adoption. So here is the cliffhanger you need to face. If AI replaces half the jobs in the world that rely on screen-based tasks, what happens to consumption when half the people's income sources shrink? What happens to unemployment insurance when the unemployment problem is not just temporary? What happens to the political stability of a society where the value of ordinary labor collapses faster than new markets can absorb displaced workers? You are going to get a partial answer in the next wave of policy and in the next wave of corporate restructuring. But you will not get a comfortable answer. Let's make this concrete with a micro story that mirrors the healthcare narrative people ignore. Years ago, many people considered surgery, radiology, and medical diagnostics as too complex to automate. Then AI started outperforming humans in some pattern recognition tasks, and robotics improved. Now combine that with data sharing and model training. A system does not have to remember in the human way. It updates and generalizes. It can process thousands of cases and extract patterns faster than any individual clinician. Now consider a hospital administrator in a smaller city. Hospital administrators have to manage budgets, they negotiate insurance reimbursements, they fight for staffing. If a technology reduces error rates and shortens surgery time, it becomes irresistible. Not because they hate doctors, because they hate costs. So you get replacement by procurement. That is how the future arrives. It arrives as buying decisions. And when roles in healthcare and administration shrink, the downstream effect is wider than you think. Hospitals are employers, clinics are employers. Healthcare spending is a large part of the consumption economy. Reduce one segment and you ripple through others. But you might say, if automation increases productivity, won't the world get richer? In theory, yes. In practice, ownership and distribution determine whether productivity becomes shared prosperity or becomes concentrated wealth. This is where the Musk-style argument about robots building everything sounds like science fiction, but it points to the underlying direction. Cost structures change radically when robots and AI do labor without needing wages, benefits, or time off. If output becomes cheap, the next question becomes who gets the output and who gets paid. If the ownership is concentrated, then the profits concentrate. Meanwhile, if the labor market collapses faster than new income sources appear, then consumers become scarce. Scarcity of consumers does not stop production. It stops hiring. It stops investment in human labor. It creates a world where assets rise and living standards fall. Now, you also have to account for global debt because the debt system is not a neutral background. Global debt levels exceeding $300 trillion create constant refinancing needs. When refinancing becomes more expensive due to rates staying higher for longer, lenders demand adjustments. Governments may cut programs. Banks may tighten lending. Businesses may restructure. The pain gets allocated somewhere, and it rarely lands softly on the top. And this is why the AI transition feels like a trap to people at the bottom. The script says, trust the economy, keep working, stay patient. But the reality is that when the income source disappears, patience does not pay rent. Now another pattern interrupt. Imagine you are in your 30s, you have student debt, and you are trying to get ahead. You hear about the creator economy. You hear that you can build passive income, monetize content, and escape the wage system. It sounds like freedom. Then you check the numbers. Most creators make close to nothing. A tiny fraction earn real money. The rest are doing labor disguised as entrepreneurship, paying for equipment, paying for time, and building audiences that platforms can change overnight. Meanwhile, the platforms extract value and keep the algorithms. That is not decentralization. That is a centralized toll road. So the dream of just create becomes another coping mechanism. People chase the dream because the wage system has stopped rewarding them fairly. But chasing the dream does not fix the macro math. The macro math is this: if the labor market is disrupted and the ownership of AI productivity is concentrated, then the income distribution worsens unless policy intervenes aggressively. But policy intervention is slow. AI adoption is fast, which leads to the darkest understanding. The future is not arriving as a single event. It is arriving as a sequence of deletions. First, repetitive tasks are automated. Then junior roles are compressed. Then middle roles are reduced. Then some entire functions are eliminated. And each step makes the next step easier because companies adjust their financial expectations. The people who owned assets at each step profit. The people who rely on wages at each step absorb the shock. So what do the wealthy do during this transition? They do two things. They hedge their value. They hold assets like gold. They diversify into hard claims and real assets. They monitor inflation and currency debasement risk, and they own the productivity engine. They invest in AI infrastructure, cloud compute, specialized chips, and the companies that can convert AI into revenue. They do not wait to see if AI will work. They buy exposure to it. This is not a moral argument, it is an investment logic argument. When you believe a system will change, you do not just hope, you position. Now you may ask, does that mean everyone else is doomed? No, it means the old rule book failed you. It also means survival tactics should replace fantasy tactics, and survival tactics require you to understand one brutal truth. When currency loses purchasing power, cash is not neutral. Cash becomes a liability over long horizons. You cannot fix that by working harder. Working harder might increase your income marginally, but if inflation and asset price growth move faster, your improved income can become a smaller and smaller share of your real-life costs. And you cannot fix it by waiting for the next crash either, because the wealthy can buy during crashes while you are busy rebuilding your savings depleted by the last crisis. So empowerment starts with clarity, not optimism. Here is your call to action, and it is not vague. Build your financial decisions around purchasing power, around risk, and around income resilience rather than around hope. That means understanding how interest rate changes flow into your mortgage, your rent, your credit card rates, your business costs, and your job market. It means treating housing as a risk, not just a dream. In a climate-disrupted world, insurance is part of housing affordability. It also means refusing to measure your progress only in dollars. Measure it in what your dollars can buy, in months of expenses, and in how easily you can replace income if your job gets automated. And most importantly, stop treating AI as a future industry you might join. Treat it as a force that will reshape every industry that involves information work. Some people will transition to higher value roles alongside AI, many others will not. The question is not whether AI will change your work. The question is whether your current skill set gives you bargaining power when the market can replace you. Remember David the nurse? We will come back to him. A year after his rent jumped, he did what most people do. He tried to save more. He cut subscriptions. He adjusted his lifestyle. He took overtime. He thought that effort would eventually be rewarded. Then the next wave hit. A clinic implemented AI triage for scheduling and preliminary screening. Staff were reduced. David still worked, but his overtime became less available. His income became more volatile. He was still valuable, but the bargaining power shifted. And because his cost had already risen, volatility felt like danger. That is the part nobody wants to say out loud. You can be a hardworking person in a rigged system and still lose. Not because you failed, but because the system changed faster than your life could adjust. And here is where the script goes even darker. David's story is not unique. It is the predictable outcome of a labor market transition combined with monetary policy that protects asset owners more than wage earners. Global debt forces governments to protect credit. Central banks protect the stability of the system. Asset owners hold hard hedges. Meanwhile, ordinary people absorb the translation costs of inflation, housing, healthcare, and job disruption. So the window is not closing in 10 years. It is closing in real time. If you want one actionable mental framework, use this. The economy is not a fair game. It is a machine that allocates resources. In 2026, AI is changing the machine's inputs and outputs. Interest rates are changing the price of money. Housing is changing the cost of stability. Climate is changing the cost of risk. And wealth concentration is determining who gets to control the machine. Now, you can argue about whether AI will create utopia through universal income or cheap goods. Some AI leaders and tech evangelists talk about the future where everyone is paid by the machine economy. But until you see a real distribution mechanism that transfers ownership or revenue to the broad population, you should treat those promises as optimistic narratives, not guarantees. And even if some distribution happens, the timing matters. The pain of transition happens first. The benefits arrive later, if they arrive at all, and history suggests they rarely arrive evenly. So the only sane way to prepare is to survive the transition. Not by fantasizing that you will be chosen for the new era, but by building resilience while the old loop breaks. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to stop pretending the old rules will save you. The system already showed its priorities. When inflation threatened, it protected financial stability. When housing became unaffordable, it kept asset values elevated instead of regrounding prices in wages. When jobs became automatable, companies moved fast and workers moved slow. The darkest takeaway is simple. In 2026, your financial future is not determined by your discipline alone. It is determined by structural power, who owns the technology, who owns the assets, who controls credit, and who gets the cash flow generated by productivity. And the sliver of empowerment is equally simple. You can regain some control by acting like a risk manager, not like a hopeful participant. Review your income resilience, reduce dependence on one paycheck, understand your housing leverage and your insurance exposure, build buffers that protect purchasing power, diversify your skill set toward roles that are harder to automate end-to-end, and do not waste time waiting for the system to admit it changed. If this changed how you see money, subscribe. I put out one of these every week. And most of what I cover you will not hear anywhere else until it is too late. Drop a comment. Tell me the biggest financial lie you were taught growing up. I read every single one.